I think the design industry has a good handle on sustainability. Not that, as I've said before, it's an add-on, it is integral to what architects and designers create.
Textile waste in Australia isn't recognised as a waste stream, and therefore the metrics around its size, its composition are fairly low.
Surveying 2 million households, around 50,000 tonnes of used furniture is discarded on pavements every year, just chucked out. That equals around 800,000 sofas, 1.7 million dining tables, 3.5 million coffee tables, and over 7 million chairs per year.
We are the second worst offender in the world for the amount of textile waste we produce, and this primarily ends up either people believe they're doing the right thing by giving it to the op shops, but the op shops can only sell a certain amount of what they have, and the rest is either ends up in landfill or it is exported. And we think that the size of the problem is running into the hundreds of thousands of tonnes. Recent data looks like it could be up to 800,000 tonnes of textile waste going to landfill every year in Australia, which are enormous numbers.
So we've been talking about product sustainability and product safety since the late 1950s. And if we make a direct comparison to what's happened within product safety, we've seen huge improvements. So, if we go back to the 1950s, we had problems with electrocution, car crashes at low speed were fatal. If we compare that to modern product safety, where you can crash a cheap car at 200 kilometres an hour and walk away, you would struggle to electrocute yourself if you tried with the modern toaster. And the real difference we saw was that governments legislated that damage caused by their products to human safety was a direct responsibility of directors. And overnight, that became legislation. It then became a mandate for businesses to not cause physical harm with their products. And in the opposite of that, we've seen the sustainable movement, this continual idea that consumers will have a grassroots movement, they'll generate demand, that demand will generate change within businesses, and we'll see this sustainable improvement. And I have to say, it has been happening, but at a much slower rate. I think it's a clear demonstration that when things happen at the top-down level, we get really structural, fast institutional change. While we rely on a grassroots level, we get confusion, misinformation, fits and starts.
An authentic design is something that is genuinely attributed to the creator. It usually credits the producer and often the distributor. Authenticity pertains to originality. It's about creating something that's innovative, something that has meaning, has value, and that is intended to last.
So my design process with any product, first of all, the brief is really interrogated. And like I was saying before, the product's got to justify its existence.
So we start our process trying to decide on the mood or the character of the product, and we do a lot of hand sketching to try and really bring out the emotion of the product and the character.
I might start sketching, I'd make little models, potentially I might make a little detail. And then if it's going to go ahead, production drawings are created, and then liaise very closely with our manufacturers to resolve the product, to make it as that's streamlined, as economic, and so forth, to bring it to reality, to market.
We always design for small batch production, so that's something we take into account with the way things are designed. We don't run things through a big factory, so things are made by hand and locally, and that enables things to be made really well, and that there's not a lot of waste that goes on.
When you buy an authentically designed product, you're buying something that's had hundreds, possibly thousands of hours put into it by the designer and the craftspeople that they work with before it gets to market.
Once again, longevity in a product is a fundamental part of, I think, deciding whether or not a product's going to go forward. For all the pieces we do in the Now collection, I guess they're all relatively short runs, and all the pieces we do, we create in a manner that is exceptionally high quality, and hopefully any buyer is going to see them as something that they're going to have for a lifetime, and if not, be passed down in generations.
Longevity of products are really important. It's the ability to reuse, repair and even resell products so that they can enjoy a first, second and sometimes a third life. Repairability in particular is ultimately important because it means that all the resources that went into creating those objects in the first instance are retained, and that in itself is sustainability.
We believe that companies such as Cult that actually want to convert these raw materials into products that people want to purchase and reuse and rebuy, that closes the loop and actually start to generate a true circular economy. You can't just recycle and produce another pile of something. It makes you feel better, but it doesn't solve the actual problem.
Cultivated is a product stewardship program with a difference. It actually incentivises people to take action and do something with the pieces that they've got when perhaps they've reached the end of their life or they need a little bit of love. You might have something in your office or at your home that's looking a bit worn or tired, and you want to have that refreshed back to its original condition so that it can be used and loved for many, many more years. It's also about fostering things like local craftsmanship, keeping those old hands-on skills alive when it comes to metalworking and timber finishing here in Australia. So as well as that, we're also looking at waste materials. So when we refurbish a product, what happens to it? Can't go to landfill? How can we repurpose it and reuse it on other pieces?
The Cultivated program, we've been quite selective, in making sure that the local craftsmen work with the original specifications. We've actually sent our upholsterer to Denmark. He's actually sort of worked with the factories that we're reupholstering. He's worked in their factories. He's understood the quality expectations. So we are, when you see a cultivated product, you'll know that it's made to the original specifications. You can call it, I guess, a product that keeps its authenticity.
The way I was actually brought up in this factory, it was always tradition. With my mentor especially, when I first came into being an apprentice, he brought me up in a sense of doing everything by hand. Everything's got to be done good quality work. Everything is done once. Think about what you've got to do and go ahead and do it. And that's exactly the same thing with Cultivated.
We are in a pretty unique little business in Australia. There aren't many of us left. Part of sustainability has to be our staff and the knowledge that they have and that we all have, and that has to be passed on, whether it's in a system, a process or written, or even better if it's experienced and trained into someone. So we get to restore very famous pieces that I've seen only in Denmark or very rarely seen a rope piqué chair out here in Australia. So we get to restore anything that's metal on those bits of furniture, but we can refinish almost anything metal.
And I think Cultivated does close that total loop. And I guess in many ways, I think, yeah, we sell new product, but we sell new product with the confidence that we can take our product back and make it a product that can be sold to someone else. We recently worked with Design Office to work on a Cultivated project for Grosvenor Place. And in that particular project, there were 3 products that we actually cultivated. One was a Swan chair, which is a design classic that we've been doing for quite a number of years. The Series 7 chairs, which we also refurbished and put those in. They were about 14 years old at the beginning. And then there was one of our latest products, our Chameleon, which is a table system, which we'd actually supplied recently at a much higher height and we cut those down and refurbish them into a different colour.
We were approached initially by Grosvenor Place in relation to a brief that Right Angle Studio had put together, which was really looking to reposition the building on the bones of its architectural credentials, so as a really desirable destination, and actually to meet that positioning to elevate the ground floor lobby spaces and actually creating a suite of environments which added a new layer and sort of basically provided environments which were almost analogous to a first-class airline lounge that would support the tenants and actually really weave something into the fabric of the building which was inherent with its geometry and its sort of architectural bones, but which actually had a really human and desirable layer to it.
We're purposefully classic and timeless, and maybe purposely unfashionable in what we do, so that a space doesn't date. It has a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year lifespan. I think on top of that, it's also important to design for change. You design those layers in, so they're not gutting the space and starting again. That's, I think, is how our best approach to providing sustainable spaces.
Sustainability is a really big piece of our design process at CAR. In our commercial and residential work, our philosophy around longevity of design is really important, and that's where sustainability comes into it, and understanding everything we need to know about the product. So knowing the product, knowing it's going to last, both for residential clients, but also with our commercial interiors work. So what's really important is, as designers, we look to the future and we support people like Cult, who are creating these initiatives and these opportunities to refurbish and look at that lifespan part of the product. So I think the challenge is looking at sustainability with fresh eyes as well. So it's not just about certified product. It's about what can the sustainability story be. And I think what Cult is doing by looking at refurbishing classic pieces that are in amazing condition is around looking at sustainability from a different perspective with a different lens.
It is very important to consider sustainably sourced materials and products, especially given that our industry can be very wasteful. And given that design is at the beginning of the process, we have the real opportunity to be at the forefront of specifying and selecting materials and products that meet a higher standard or are much more sustainably sourced and have the least amount of impact on our environment.
The Powerhouse Museum likes to bring in the best thinking at the moment in design and science. We like to bring those people together so we can look into the future and do the best we can, and sustainability is one of our main goals. We look at the full operation of the life of everything we do, and that's where we see sustainability taking place. We are looking to contribute to a zero carbon economy. This is what the future is, and it is part of our entire objective. So the Powerhouse has made some strategic purchases of original design furniture over the years of our operation. As part of the new building which we're sitting in today, in 1988, there was some custom design furniture that was built within it. In addition to that, we ordered a number of pieces that are still with us today. So this is 30 to 40 years later. They have served very well. They are everywhere. We can see them in our foyers. They're open to the public who use them in education spaces. We also see some of them in our office area. So they have had an impressive longevity just due to the fact that they're very well made. The materials that were used were amazing, and we still use them today. We were very interested in Cult's Cultivated range because that aligns really well with our thinking about sustainability.
Some of the most amazing projects that I've seen during my time as an editor, I walked into the building and I thought, is this what they can do? You mean they can do all this, the ventilation, the water system, the air purification, just so many things were done to an old building to make it new again and better again. And I thought maybe this can happen everywhere. Maybe this really can happen.
The biggest aspect is education. People need to understand the damage that their textiles can do. We've educated people very well on plastic bottles, so people take their plastic bottles to their yellow top bin or their container deposit scheme. But that plastic bottle is made of polyester. T-shirts, bed sheets, furniture coverings all contain polyester, which do exactly the same damage. But people don't think that their textiles do anywhere near the damage a Coke bottle will do.
We released Reflect last year, tail end of last year, and it's a beautiful, quite elegant twill weave that was designed by Patricia Urquiola, but it's made from 100% recycled polyester. And that recycled polyester is post-consumer waste, which means it comes from plastic bottles, essentially. The thing that's interesting for me is the scope of what's achievable with that. And obviously Reflect is really new, but we have another one within our range, Revive, which has been in the collection since 2014. And to give you an idea of the scope of what's possible, each metre of Revive demands 30 bottles to make it. And in 2018, we actually removed 2.3 million plastic bottles from the waste cycle, which I think is pretty amazing when you quantify it.
At Astor, we reduce and then we reuse as much energy as possible. So if we look at our use of water here, we went through well over 190,000 litres a day of Sydney's good drinking water. We reduced the heavy metals by solidifying them. And at one point, the 190 managed to go right down to 6,000 litres a day. So we've reduced our water, gas and electricity consumption, and we've vastly improved the quality of the water that we do actually discard as well.
You can't keep telling a person what they're doing is wrong if you haven't got a way out for them to do something right. We are emotionally, physically, financially geared to consume, but we consume in a way that we take out more than we put in. And I think we need to adjust our thinking over time, that we try to sort of say, how can I always take out a little bit less than what I put in?
And I really feel like furniture manufacturers are really starting to get this. Government tenders are requesting environmental and social responsibility. End users, the big corporations all want sustainable products in their commercial office space.
What Cult is doing is super aligned with the way that we operate. They're considering every aspect of the product, particularly the end of the life cycle, and that's something that's really important to us. It used to be that our biggest thoughts were about is something biodegradable at the end of its life, but now it's more, how can we take this material and use it in a smarter way to respect the Earth's resources? Can we rethink the way that we do it? Can we recycle it or reuse it? And that's where we come together.
So what Cultivated is doing in this space is brilliant because it's giving consumers an opportunity to purchase reused products and beautiful reused products. But it also enables people that want to give their products, who own these products, a second life, an opportunity for those products to be refurbished and reused in another environment.
I guess it's one thing about having a certificate that says the product's green. It's another thing about saying, well, we'll be there at the end to make sure that we take it back and repurpose it. And I think Cultivated does close that total loop.